When Demi Moore lost everything, and rebuilt herself anyway. I was lying on my bathroom floor at 3 a.m., shaking uncontrollably, when I realized I had become a stranger to myself. The pills scattered around me weren't just medication anymore, they were my escape from a reality I couldn't face. The woman who once commanded $12.5 million per film, who graced magazine covers and red carpets with confidence, was now a hollow shell, desperately clinging to anything that would numb the pain. My marriage to Ashton Kutcher wasn't just ending, it was imploding in the most public, humiliating way possible. 25 years younger, charming, and seemingly devoted, he had become my obsession. I had molded myself into what I thought he wanted, younger, wilder, more reckless. I started drinking again after 20 years of sobriety. I began using substances I swore I'd never touch. "You're not the woman I married," he said during one of our final fights, his words cutting deeper than any tabloid headline ever could. But the truth was more devastating, I wasn't the woman I used to be either. The paparazzi followed me everywhere, cameras clicking as I stumbled out of nightclubs, documenting every moment of my descent. "Demi's downward spiral," screamed the headlines. "Aging actress loses it all." Each photo was a mirror I couldn't bear to look into. My daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah, watched their mother disappear before their eyes. The woman who had once been their rock, their fierce protector, was now someone they barely recognized. Rumor found me unconscious one night, my body convulsing from an overdose. The terror in her eyes when I came to is something that still haunts me. "Mom, please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We can't lose you too." Those words shattered something inside me that pills and alcohol never could. I spent the next 2 years in the deepest, darkest hole I'd ever known. I isolated myself from everyone who cared about me. My career was non-existent. My relationships were destroyed. I had become a cautionary tale, a punchline, a has-been who couldn't handle aging in Hollywood. But sometimes, you have to completely break apart to discover what's real. One morning, I woke up and made a choice. Not the choice to get better, that seemed impossible. But the choice to get honest. Brutally, painfully honest about who I had become and why. I checked into rehab, not for the cameras or the public, but for the woman I used to be and the daughters who deserved their mother back. I sat in group therapy sessions, stripped of makeup, designer clothes, and pretense, sharing my story with strangers who understood addiction's grip. I lost myself trying to be someone else's idea of perfect, I admitted in one session, the words feeling foreign yet liberating. Recovery wasn't glamorous. There were days I wanted to quit, moments when the shame felt unbearable. But slowly, I began to remember who Demi Moore really was. Not the tabloid version, not Ashton's wife, not even the movie star, but the survivor who had overcome an abusive childhood, who had fought for every role, who had raised 3 incredible daughters. I started writing. At first, it was just journal entries, raw and unfiltered thoughts about my journey. But those pages became my lifeline, my way of processing decades of pain, trauma, and self-destructive patterns. Those journal entries eventually became Inside Out, my memoir. When my publisher suggested the title, I laughed bitterly. "That's exactly what happened to me," I said. "I was turned inside out, and somehow, that saved my life." The book became a bestseller, but more importantly, it became my reconciliation with the truth. I didn't sugarcoat the addiction, the failed marriages, or the mistakes. I owned every painful detail. My daughters read it before publication. I was terrified they'd reject me all over again after seeing the full scope of my failures laid bare. Instead, Scout hugged me after finishing it. "Now I understand," she said. "You weren't just my mom struggling, you were a human being in pain." That forgiveness changed everything. I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to thrive again. I started taking acting classes, approaching my craft with the hunger I'd had as a young actress. I chose projects that challenged me, stories that mattered, roles that reminded me why I fell in love with acting in the first place. When I walked the red carpet for my comeback film, photographers captured something they hadn't seen in years: genuine confidence. Not the manufactured kind I'd performed during my darkest days, but the real thing, the quiet strength that comes from surviving your own destruction and choosing to rebuild. I had to break completely to find out what was real, I told an interviewer that night. The breaking wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of my real story. Today, my relationship with my daughters is stronger than it's ever been. We don't pretend the dark years didn't happen, but we don't let them define us either. I'm grandmother to my beautiful grandchildren, who know me not as a cautionary tale, but as the woman who refused to stay down. I didn't just return to Hollywood, I rewrote the entire narrative. The woman who once lost everything discovered that sometimes losing everything is exactly what you need to find yourself. My scars aren't hidden anymore. They're proof that I survived. They're evidence that rock bottom can be the foundation you build your new life on. I am Demi Moore. I am a survivor. I am not my mistakes, I am what I chose to do after making them. And that choice changed everything. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more incredible stories of resilience, redemption, and the human spirit's power to overcome.